Hello, everyone. Welcome to my Call of Duty League May 20th DraftKings breakdown. Quickly, before we get started, I want to start this video off with doing a little bit of a tier list. That way, everyone can kind of get an idea of what I'm thinking about the teams. How I like to view these typically is I usually have around I have four tiers here. I think I've put into the boxes to the left on what I probably think about, their level. Typically, how I view the tier lists is I would typically have all the teams in the same tier could beat each other. I wouldn't be that surprised. I would be surprised if a team below a tier beat a team above a tier. I think there's generally like a gap there. Maybe it's not big or anything, but that's kind of how I would view these things. And I want to say this is probably going to be outdated pretty quickly because I'm doing this um, under the pretense that we're kind of going off of the rosters that we have now. For example, London Royal Ravens with Harry, Optic with Prolute. I don't think there's any other sub things. LAG now with their full roster, they don't have Spart anymore. Minnesota with Havoc, for example. So we're just going off of the rosters that we're kind of seeing right now. Here, and I wanted to bring this up a little bit. I wanted to show the rosters that we're talking about here, so that we have all this information. So if you guys are here just for like the DFS content and stuff, skip ahead. Maybe I'll have a time slot in the description for it, but I want to talk more about the league as a whole a little bit. That way you guys can have a more generalized idea of what I'm thinking, or like why I'm thinking this, or why I'm thinking a certain way when it comes down to kind of how we view the league as a whole and stuff. So I think it's good to kind of have a better grasp on everything than trying to look at a single day or anything like that. So here are the rosters we'll be kind of going off of here. I won't spend too much time on this, so if you want to stick around, I would recommend it and ask for it. But if you're here just for that, then skip ahead. I'll probably have a link in the description, maybe not. The first one up is Boston Breach. I want to put them in the B tier, maybe one or two things away. So their roster is still the same. They just haven't shown enough to win yet. Methods, TJ Halley, Narrow, and Capsule. I think again they're pretty good. They just haven't shown enough to win anything yet. They haven't beaten the top teams consistently. They've beaten the lesser teams pretty consistently. I feel pretty comfortable having them start off that kind of middle tier or second tier. I would say top tier pretty much. The next one up is the Paris Legion. I would put them in the kind of C tier. I don't think they're fully lackluster. The roster again is Tampa, John, Gravity, and Jimbo. I think Temp and Gravity have been performing pretty well lately. I think Jimbo has shown some promise. He's had a lot of highlights. He just needs to find some consistency. I will say John has a really tough role. He typically plays that kind of a really bad role when it comes to stats and all that stuff. So maybe it does feel a little harsh to put a lot of the blame on John. I would kind of split it between John and Jimbo. I think Temp and Gravity have been really strong. Jimbo is just pretty inconsistent. John has a really tough role, so maybe it looks a little bit worse, but I think those are pretty problematic, I think, in my opinion, so that's why I have them down here. But I think that fact that they have two players that I feel pretty confident in, Temp and Gravity, that I'm fine leaving them up in that tier. London Royal Ravens, this one may be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to put them in the kind of C tier here as well. I'm going to put them even behind Paris. I just think they've looked really lackluster lately. They're a team that I do like. I mean, granted they did just beat Paris, so maybe that is a little bit problematic. But I think long term, I would still favor Paris over London. I just have not liked what I saw from them. They don't seem to be really showing much signs of improvement or innovation. I think early on in this game, when I was on them pretty heavily, I was really high on them. I liked them a lot. I thought they were kind of innovating a lot then, but it's always a lot easier to innovate at the beginning as opposed to later on when a lot of the things are kind of proven. So they haven't really shown much. Again, it's kind of just been Afro and Zero for me personally. We haven't seen much from Harry at all, so I'm not gonna like call for him to be cut or dropped or anything like that. But Nasty hasn't shown that much. He's shown a little bit of inconsistency as well. He's had some pop-off series, but he's been relatively unexciting, and we just don't know what we're getting yet from Harry. So maybe I would give this team some time, but for now, I'm not liking the build makeup there. LNFA's not much to talk about. Predominant championship contenders. It's really hard to say anything other than they're probably always going to be vying for the title. Really, really strong individual players. Celium and Simp have been going crazy. We know Abizi's upside. We know Arcides plays that really slow role. His numbers are not going to be the greatest. But he has shown some upside games there here and there as well. So I'm pretty confident at the NFAs. Not much to say there. I think they're probably going to be top 2 in most anybody's tier list. LA Thieves, this is going to be in the kind of B tier here as well, but I might have them a little bit lower than people will think. I'm still not very high on this team, although they did make it to... It was either the semifinals or the finals of the Pro-Am. Here, we could quickly take a look here. I want to say the semis, they lost to New York. Oh, no, it was the finals they ended up losing to New York. So they've shown some upside so far. We know the names on the roster, but they beat London and then got stomped by Minnesota. We were on Minnesota in that series, so that obviously feels pretty good there. That's weird. I just noticed the player profile pics there. I just think that they've shown a lot of inconsistency. I just feel like the names and the kind of pressure of this roster is kind of just still overrated in my opinion. They just have not all clicked at the same time. I feel like we saw a really high performance starting off like through the first half of the year, maybe those first couple sets of seasons. It was Envoy. Now we're seeing a lot more from Octane, some Draza. We are not seeing that much from Kenny yet. The role swap has not proven that successful so far. I just think there's still problems with this team. I could argue putting them in like a little bit lower of a tier, but it just feels a little bit disrespectful. I think LA is still considerably better than those teams. LAG, might be a little bit controversial here as well, but I'm going to put them in the rebuild, the bottom category. They've looked really, really bad lately, and I don't know if bringing Gunless back helps that much. So they are putting Spart back to the bench. They're bringing Gunless back in. After they won Season 2 Major, it kind of all went downhill from there. I don't know if they've won a series since then. Hey, let's look at... We could look at that. That's something we could look at. So we could find that out if that's true or if I'm just making that up. But I'm pretty sure they have not won a series since they won the tournament, which is crazy to say. Maybe it feels a little harsh to put them in that category. Maybe I'll put them at the bottom end of this one, but I just think they've looked really bad lately. I do not like the makeup of this team at all. Maybe bringing Gunless back does help. Again, Spark was kind of a one-trick pony. He was really good at the LAN or that one event. He had his Volk. It kind of caught everyone off guard. Now that everything's more on a level playing field, he's being a little exposed. So yeah, they won the tournament. They beat FaZe 5-2. And then they've not won a series since then. They've lost to Minnesota, Optic, Boston, Paris, and then Toronto NA, which is an academy team. So very poor performance from LAG lately. I think bringing Gunless in will help them a little bit. That's kind of what made me move them up a little bit of a tier. I think you could argue putting them up a little bit above London. This is kind of interchangeable for me, but for now, I'm going to leave them there just because they've not shown that much lately. And especially when it comes to the DraftKings stuff, they've been pretty poor in that area. They're losing a lot when it comes to the respawn game modes. New York. This one's tough because I'm debating whether I want to put them up in the S tier, like that top tier, or kind of the bottom of this one. For now, I'm going to put them in the like one or two things like the A tier, a little bit under. I know they did just win the Pro-Am, but I don't want to put too much stock into the Pro-Am. After all, they did just lose to Atlanta FaZe. They did beat Boston in a pretty decent fashion there as well. So I think you could maybe argue. I'll put them up in the S tier. You know, I'll just bite it. I'll put them up there. This team has been really, really, really strong, and I think it's finally amazing to see Hydra unlocked. The makeup of this team makes a lot of sense. I think their roles are really defined and really, really fleshed out, really, really smart as well. I think letting Hydra get unleashed, having Crimsix be the sole vocal leader of this team, that's something I've been saying is the problem with New York for a long time when they were the really, really bad team, when they were the joke of the league. Was the problem I think was between Crimsix and Clayster. You cannot have two of those people on the same team. You cannot have two vocal leaders who want their vision to be played out in the game. They end up choosing Crimsix over Clayster. I think they're reaping the benefits of that. Although I do think Clayster is a great player, it feels a little bad not to have him in the league. I do think that New York has been looking incredible lately, and I think they only have room to grow. Again, I feel like they're still a relatively new squad. Um, we know Hydra is a relatively young player compared to the whole league and stuff. Paulex, Kismet, those are both pretty young players when it comes to the league as well. I feel like it's Crimsix and three relatively young players with a lot of upside, a lot of potential. So I'm fine putting them up in that top tier. I think they're really strong. They're probably contending. I think if things continue the way they have been, I'm a big fan of this team. I really like the trajectory that they're on. Next up, Toronto Ultra. This one's tough, but they're probably going to be my first rebuild team. They might be my only rebuild team. I'm not sure. I don't want to get ahead of myself there. But I feel like they've just had so many lackluster performances now. It's kind of hard to view much from them. Granted, they did beat Seattle. I definitely did not see that coming. It's just tough because last year during all of the Call of Duty Cold War season, granted, it's a different game and stuff, but they were such a good team. They were kind of like the second place team behind Atlanta FaZe most of the year. It was kind of Atlanta FaZe and then Toronto, then everyone else. So it feels a little bad to kind of have them at the bottom tier. I think you again could maybe argue that having them up a tier makes sense, but I'll put them up in this tier. I don't know if I'm going to have a team all the way in the bottom tier. I don't know if anybody is that bad. Maybe Toronto could be there, but it feels a little disrespectful to have them in that tier. I think Toronto is a definitely competitive with all the rest of the teams in this area. I think Toronto versus London, LAG, Paris, I think those are all very close matches. We definitely see that in the match Toronto's won so far. Again, I just think that mainly comes down to their hard points. I think they definitely can win search and destroys and controls, the slower, more methodical, more brain-oriented game modes. I think them and the hard points have been pretty lackluster. I think they definitely need to get that sorted out. They have not had that great of individual performances from anyone so far. We just need more. We just need some more performances. We just need more individual talent coming from Toronto. I think they have everything else. They just don't have the lethalness that they don't have the crazy matches from anyone, like how we see sometimes Atlanta FaZe can have some bad matches, but maybe Simp pops off and he has like a 40 kills game, we just don't see that from Toronto, and that's something that I think is lacking a little bit. And I think all four of these players are possible of that. I just don't see it enough, and it's something we need a little bit more of. So for now, I'm probably gonna have them in the worst team in the league. Maybe a little bit of spoilers there, but there's just something lacking about this team, and it's hard to put my finger on it. They just don't have it. They just don't have it when it comes to hardpoint, and I think it's really important. Minnesota Rockers. So this is a pretty interesting one because they've been a newly formed team. They 3-0'd LAG and LA Thieves. I'm going to put them up in this. Maybe this is a little soon. I will preface it with saying this is probably a little bit soon. They've only played 2 series. It's hard to judge them off of playing a single weekend. They literally played Saturday, Sunday, and they kind of leapfrogging a lot of people. So that's a little bit concerning. So take this with a grain of salt, maybe. But they looked really good in those 2 series. They looked really, really dominant. They look like a much different team now that they have Havoc in their lineup, being attached Priestess, Standy, Havoc. They just looked really good. I can't put it any other way. They looked much better. Again, I think this is a relatively malleable team. I think they have a lot of upside. We've seen high highs and low lows from pretty much everybody on this roster, attached Priestess, Standy, and Havoc. I definitely like the upside and potential that Standy has. He was Rookie of the Year, I think, at some point, maybe in the last couple of years. He's a really, really highly touted upcoming talent. And I'm letting. That's why I kind of gave them a pass a little bit earlier. But now that they made the change, they're looking much better. Their roles again feel a little bit more defined, a little bit better. I like the upside of this team. I don't know if they can win it necessarily. I guess it wouldn't be that crazy because last year they did something similar. They made the roster change. They won the major. I definitely think it is possible, but I just don't know if they can consistently beat everybody else below them for me to justify putting them up to that top tier at the moment. I'm going to put them above LA Thieves, though, for sure, because they did just 3-0 them, so it feels a little misleading if I don't do that. Florida Mutineers. I'm going to put them up this in the A tier here as well. I might put them at the top of this tier, as kind of weird as controversial as that may be. I've been really impressed with them. I think they're really coming around. The Florida Mutineers are my team to watch. They did get smoked by Texas. That was definitely concerning, but they do play here against LAG. I'm interested to see the odds on this one because I think Florida should be pretty heavily favored, but we'll see when that time comes. But I think Florida's really good. I think they're really finally starting to hit their stride. Again, we look at the roster. It's Sky's Awakening, Dave, Patty, and Vivid. Again, I think this is similar to kind of the things I've said earlier about other teams. I think their roles are really coming together. I think Sky specifically is individually stepping up a lot better. That's kind of all they needed. Vivid has a really tough role. It's tough for him to get the numbers there and all that stuff. Dave Petty plays a relatively easy role, but he does it okay enough. Awakening's been doing a hard role pretty well. Florida's, I think, just coming together, and I really like their upside. They definitely have, I think, winnable upside, but again, I don't want to put them up in that tier where I think they're going to consistently beat everyone else below them. Optic, the only reason I'm going to put Optic not in the top tier is because of the substitute. Like the name of the category is one or two things away, and I think the one thing away is that the fact they have Prolu and they don't have Illy at the moment. I think Illy does bring a certain calmness and skill when it comes specifically to the search and destroys. That's something he's been proficient in for a long time, and although his numbers don't back it up when we look at it from a DFS standpoint, his individual talent in specifically search and destroy helps them win a lot more. I think he plays a relatively tough role. I think he does it well enough. I think he's a really integral part of the team winning. And without him, it's going to be tough. I don't know how much Optic Texas suffers when it comes to the respawn game modes. I'm interested to see how their numbers will look going forward because they haven't really looked like they've taken their foot off the gas in a way. They 3-0'd LAG and Florida. They do have a match with FaZe coming up on Sunday, so that'll be interesting to watch and see. I just think for now, they're going to be at the top tier. As soon as they get Illy back, I think they are going to be at the top tier, but until then, it's going to be tough. Seattle Surge. This one's pretty tough, but I think I'm going to slot them in here slightly ahead of everyone else that I think is maybe a little bit worse. I like Seattle still. They're just so wildly inconsistent. This is something I noticed a while ago. I think it's easier to look at this on Breaking Point. So if we look at the team stats here for Vanguard, I'm sorry this is going on a little bit longer, but I'll remember to leave it in the description if you guys don't care about this. So if you clicked on that, then you're not hearing this. So here's the Seattle Surge match history. So far they lost to Toronto and then they beat Paris. At the Pro-Am Classic, they lost to Toronto, Atlanta, and StrikeX, an amateur team. Before that, they went to Game 5 with LAG, lost it. Went to Game 5 with Atlanta, lost it. And then they beat Texas 3-0. And they beat LA Thieves 3-1. And then they beat Atlanta FaZe 3-2. And they lost to Texas 1-3. How are they playing the best teams close and then losing to the losers? I don't understand it. Here again, at the beginning, at the Kickoff Classic, they beat London 3-0, which was a good team at the time. They beat FaZe. They lost to, they beat New York, who was bad at the time. They beat Toronto, beat New York, Toronto, Minnesota. Lost to Florida, London. They lost to Texas and Paris at LAN. And then Major 2 rolls around. They lost to Boston. They beat FaZe. How are they beating the best team in the game and then losing to everyone else? I don't understand it. So there's something clearly there and that they have. There is something there. I just don't know what it is or how they can capture it and make it consistent. They know they've been winning the search and destroys a lot lately, which I think is a decent enough base for them, but they need to start winning respawn game modes. If we look at how they've been playing so far, sorry. At the Pro-Am Classic and so far at this early Major 3 qualifiers, they're 2-8 in hardpoint, abysmal. 4-2 in search, pretty good. 2-3 in control, pretty. That's okay. That's fine enough. If they're winning their search and destroys and their controls, then they're like okay in an okay range. But they need to be doing a little bit better in hardpoint. Like, come on, guys. Like, this is tough. I mean, that's all it comes down to. 2-8 in hardpoint. They need some consistency and some skill in that mode. They have all the talent there. We know the individual skill that Pred, Sib, Mac, even accuracy. We know that the talent level that these players have. I mean, geez, if you want to talk about an absolute letdown, the Mac match that he had last game is laughably bad. Like, laughably bad. Was it this Tuscan? Where did Mac have the really bad match on? I guess it might have been earlier in the week. Whoops. Maybe it was against Toronto? Yeah, here it was, the Toronto hardpoint. Like, they lost by 4 points when Mac had 8 kills. The next closest to him was 24. Pred tripled up his kills and was the next closest to him in the lobby, and that set them up for an 0-6 in the final. Like, they just need some consistency here. They need to be able to put things together. Like Sib had a really strong map 1. I guess his numbers weren't as strong as I remember, but Pred went crazy in map 2, or in this control, for them to win. Sib went crazy in this fourth map. I mean. So, like, they have a big map from Pred, Sib is missing. They have a big map from Sib, Pred is missing. Mac is so far missing, they still can't find him. Like, Seattle's so frustrating. It's so annoying. They definitely should be a lot better, given the names and performances that I've seen, but it's been so wildly consistent, it's hard to have it any other way. So, I think, is going to be my tier list for the moment. Again, I think things will change when, when rosters start getting more perfected. I think, again, when we get Illy back, we're moving them up to S tier, etc. I don't think they're any completely bad. I would just write them off rosters at the moment. We've seen enough from some of these rosters that I think this is a relatively fair ranking. I think you again could argue maybe having some of the orders mixed around. I think that's fair. This is just kind of how I would view their upside or potential to maybe win a major, for example. Again, I guess this is kind of it. This is what I'll call it there. So we can move on to the DraftKings portion here. So forgive me as I've talked too much. I'm probably going to go through this a little bit quickly because my voice is fading already as it does. Well, that's annoying. Oh. Okay. Well, that's because I'm on a VPN at the moment, so because we can't see those odds. Here, I'll bring up the odds on my second monitor here while I kind of get started talking about some of the other things. So, let's see here. Okay, I guess it doesn't show for some reason, but we'll just kind of have to keep these in our mind. Boston Breach minus 170, Minnesota Toronto. Toronto is a slight favorite. Again, that's pretty surprising. Florida minus 220 against LAG. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind. So Florida's only the really big favorite. Boston's a decent sized favorite. Toronto's slight favorite over Minnesota. Crazy stuff. So now that we have that kind of established, let's just kind of follow what I was thinking, what I was talking about earlier. So if you guys skip the tier list portion, maybe just take a look at the end where I kind of ranked the teams and stuff. I would recommend that. That way some of these things can make sense. But off the jump, I don't agree with that Boston line being that close. I think Boston has been predominantly better or more consistently better than London. I just think they're just not looking good right now, and I don't understand these like depressed prices on Boston. I think Boston is a relatively strong team. I think London's been looking really shaky lately. I don't understand why that price is that close, if I'm honest. I'm on Boston pretty heavily here. Look at the player stats of that we've seen so far from them. Uh, I don't think they've played that much yet. Let's see. If we're to look at just the major three qualifiers, I think they've only played one series, if that. They played one series, wasn't the best. So yeah, we'll go back to keeping the Pro-Am Classic in there as well. So we look at that. It's methods and capsule, maybe a little bit of TJ Halley. And we know Narrow's upside, but typically I don't want to get there. I expect them to be pretty popular. They are pretty cheap for their price. I think in some circumstances I could argue maybe going to the London side. I think there's going to be a good bit of value and leverage on that side. I think Zero and Afro both being the cheapest two players, who I think are arguably the best two players of that team, it definitely makes some sense. I don't think you'd be crazy to go to that side. I definitely think that would be fine play as well. We'll have to look at the rest of the slate. But for now, I think I'm probably just going to be eating the chalk on methods at 8.6, Capsule at 9.8, maybe TJ Halley at 7.6. That is a pretty appealing price tag, and I think a very winnable matchup. We should look at the we'll look at the maps. I need to remember to to look at the maps and stuff. But we know London likes to ban Bocage, so that's like instantly red flag number one. That's what we look for. We look for the Bocages. We know that the kill numbers and stuff can get out of hand on the Bocage. So yeah, we see London to ban the Bocage. They pick either Berlin or Gavutu. Boston Breach, they usually they either ban the Bocage or the Gavutu. So in this case, it would be the Gavutu. Then I would expect London to go to the Berlin, and then I think just left over Boston will go to the Tuscan. So Berlin and Tuscan I think should be the hard points here. When it comes to controls, I reckon both of these teams will probably just go to the Berlin, although the information on that is not that much yet. So I'm a little unsure on where they'd be going with the controls, but I don't think it matters too much. I guess London likes the Gavutu, so I'm not sure. I think mostly for this one, the hard points, Berlin and Tuscan, those are kind of like those are kind of in the middle. I think those are the second and third best hard point maps, so it's pretty average. So I wouldn't weigh the maps too much in this one. I'm fine going with methods. I'm going with Capsule, TJ Halley if you need the money instead. I'm fine with both of those guys. I think they're going to be relatively popular. I don't know how much like a 3-stack of them would be. I probably wouldn't recommend that again because the maps are pretty lackluster, but I like Boston. I don't think you're crazy if you do want to go to the London side. I do think they should be lesser owned. They are really cheap. A lot of those like arrows I think I'm looking at are kind of pointing towards London here. Zero and Afro at 66 and 62 are really nice to get into your lineup, but again, I just don't see a reason to. I just feel like these teams are not that close in terms of skill, so it's really hard for me to get on this other side. I just haven't seen that much from London lately. I've just not been impressed with this new version of them. Although Boston, they lost to New York, big whoop. New York, I think, is a really good team. I just favor Boston a lot here, so that's why I'm just going with the Boston side. I'll eat the chalk. I'm not really too concerned about the ownership here. I think they will be relatively popular, but I'm fine with that. I think there's other ways to get a little bit different on this one. The next one up, Toronto, Minnesota. This one should be pretty interesting. Again, the odds on this one were pretty close when we looked at them, but I kind of disagree with them. I don't think Toronto is on the same level as Minnesota. Again, part of the problem is, I'm looking at random stats here from Minnesota. Let's see. Yeah, we have the right stuff here. So when we look at Minnesota's updated stuff, they've only lost to Florida, who I think is, again, a really strong team. Optic, who I think is a really strong team. So nothing to be scared of from them. We look at Toronto. They did have a decent run here, but they lost to FaZe in New York. That's not terrible either. They did beat Seattle, Florida, and then Seattle again. So it does look like Toronto is kind of coming around a little bit. I guess maybe with this in mind, I do think the series is a little bit closer than maybe I alluded to earlier. Specifically those hard points, that is pretty decent number, or that is pretty decent recent results there for the hard points for Toronto. I think this will be a pretty close series, but I think either way, I'm pretty impressed with a lot of the numbers from the Minnesota side. I would much prefer that one. Looking at price tags, I expect people maybe will go to the Toronto side. Minnesota's not cheap at all. 10-2, 9,000 for the main guys. You can get all of Toronto pretty cheap. Cammy's at 9-2. Um, Insights at 8-8. You could even get Cammy and or Kleenex and Bance at sub 8K. Bance at 6-4. Very affordable numbers for those guys. So I think I think it's fair if you want to go Toronto, but I'm still leaning Minnesota. I think all the things I said earlier, I'm going to continue to abide by here. Um, when we look at the maps, it's kind of tough because the change so quickly, and I wish Breaking Point showed you what maps they banned in this certain time frame. I think Toronto will probably ban Bocage, and I think Minnesota will probably ban Berlin. I think Minnesota will go to the Gavutu, and I think Toronto will go to the Tuscan. So we're probably looking at a Gavutu Tuscan. That's 2 and 4 probably when it comes to hardpoint maps. So not the greatest. We're probably gonna get the Berlin Control, I'd imagine. Looks like they both Minnesota bans Gavutu. Toronto kind of coin flips it a little, but Toronto's like the Berlin. I'm not sure on the Control, but I don't think it matters too much. Worth sweating over. So I don't expect greatness from the hardpoint maps. Again, I think Toronto would be wise to ban Bocage. Then Minnesota would probably ban the Berlin. So we're probably going to get the Gavutu Tuscan, I think, in my opinion. So not the greatest maps, nothing to write home about there. But again, I'm still going with the Minnesota side. I think all the things I said earlier are still I'm standing by. I've been more impressed with Minnesota lately. Toronto, although their recent results haven't been the worst, I'm still not going to that side. LAG Florida. This is a pretty interesting one. I'm a little surprised that the odds are that much in favor of Florida, if I'm honest. But although if you do look at these recent results here for LAG, it is definitely pretty concerning. Well, on the other side, I do think Florida's been relatively decent. So, I think mainly for this one, it comes down to the respawn game modes. I think Florida is heavily favored in a lot of these respawns. They've been not. Geez, sorry, it's absolutely stumbled all over my words there. They have yet to been able to play a Bocage. It's been banned against them every time. I think it's probably going to happen here as well. Unfortunately, we might have a Bocageless day, which maybe can be good. It opens up a little bit of everything for us, but I would expect LAG and their 0-3 Bocage record to ban it out. Although if they do have the confidence to play it 3 times and lose on it 3 times, maybe they still think they can play it. I'm not sure. I wouldn't expect that to happen though. Bocage and Gavutu have been one of their 2 bans. Florida typically goes to Tuscan. I think that would make sense for them. So Florida will ban Tuscan. Unfortunately, I think LAG will ban Bocage. So I do think we get the worst possible map set here, and we go to Berlin Gavutu. I'm not that concerned about it again because we mentioned I don't think there's going to be a Bocage in any of these series, unfortunately. Maybe LAG let the Bocage through. I mean, they have been playing it, so maybe they think they're a few adaptations away from being decent on it. I'm not sure. I wish I could see like their series by series bans. That would maybe give a little bit of more intel. But considering LAG's been losing Bocage, Florida love Bocage. It seems like people just ban Bocage against Florida. So I would expect it to continue to happen here. And then I don't know if Florida will ban Tuscan because they have been winning on it. That's a little bit up in the air. But again, I don't think it matters. I think Florida is probably favored on all 3 maps, Berlin, Gavutu, and Tuscan. I think they're favored on all the maps. I think they're favored on Bocage even if that happens. So I'm fine with rolling out Florida in any capacity. I think they've been just a much better team. Again, they're probably going to be pretty chalk and stuff. They are really expensive. It is kind of tough to get them in. I don't think I'd go to Vivid down there at 68. Gunless is in, by the way. I don't know if that out tag might drive some people away. So keep an eye on that. Maybe if Gunless is ruled out on here, but he is playing, I believe. So if Gunless still has that out tag, I might load up some Gunless just because he might be super low owned because of that out tag. I'm not sure. Keep an eye out for that. But I'm just gonna eat it up with Florida. Sky's Awakening, Dave Patty, all at really expensive price tags. That does make something like the London boys make a little bit more appealing. But again, I still don't know if I'm gonna get there. It's gonna be a tough build. I'm gonna be honest. It's a tough build for me. I like Boston, Minnesota, Florida. Again, all the bottom teams. I think I did that last week, which is weird. Not much value here. I like Standy, Skies, Capsule, Awakening, Attach, Methods, Dave. These are all above 8K. It's gonna be tough to get these guys in, so I'm not sure how the build's gonna end up looking, but I like those guys. So it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be what I'm looking at. And that'll be kind of what I'm looking at. So when I set the tournaments to the Pro-Am Classic, which is the most recent event, and then the qualifiers that we've played so far, so probably the last 2 or 3 weeks of play, whoops, I think that's a fair enough sample size for what I want to look at. And then we can see Attach has been really strong, Awakening up there as well. So it's been Attach and Awakening, 2 high priority targets. Sky's Methods have been decent. Capsule, Dave, maybe Vivid. That's a decent number there for Vivid. He is 64. 68 for Vivid. That's not bad. He definitely has some upside there. Although I do worry. Actually, I think of Vivid as a Bocage only selection, but considering that they haven't played Bocage and he has a 1.01 at, let's see, does it say it on here? It doesn't show his engagements here. That's a little annoying. So we could see his engagements per 10 minutes is at 54. Just an absurd pace. Anything over 50 is pretty crazy. You can see Dave Patty all the way down at 38 for the other side of the spectrum. So we know Vivid's the crazy boy of the bunch. So I take that back. I guess I kind of would go Vivid over Dave Patty. I just think the engagement level is crazy enough and the KD is good enough. So maybe it would be Vivid and Skies and Awakening, mixing it up in that way. So yeah, that'll be my view on that one. So hopefully you guys managed to get some something out of this video. A little bit of a different style, but I think I got a little bit more of the details and more of this kind of stuff that I'm looking at when it comes to what I'm looking at, and that's what I'll be doing. So hopefully you guys appreciate the earlier video, getting this out on time so everyone can actually get a look at it and all that stuff. So that'll be it for me today. I will see you guys for the Saturday slate. That video will be coming out after the Friday slate, so probably pretty late. But I want to see the games before they happen next. You know, I hope that makes sense. So that'll be it for me today. Best luck to you guys on the 20th Call of Duty slate. I will have a video out for the League of Legends slate on the same day as well. CSGO probably has a slate that day as well. I think it's just a 2-gamer, but I think it looks intriguing enough. So if you guys are interested in that, I'll be having those out also. And best luck. I'll see you guys Saturday.